Welcome to day 274 of the 300 movie challenge. Today we watched the highest grossing film of March 2017, which was Beauty and the Beast, the live action version.
Well, I'm not sure where to start with this.
This is a very complicated film.
Yeah.
Controversial, I
Yeah.
guess.
Controversial is a good. I think it's the most controversial thus far
Of
all
the- Yeah, well, because here, I think I know why. So, okay, so we had Maleficent, Cinderella, and Jungle Book. Right?
Yeah.
Yes.
Now, there's two things that are true about those three movies that is not true about this one.
Okay.
The first is that they're old movies, the originals.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, Sleeping Beauty is like from the 50s, I think.
I think so.
Jungle
50s
Book.
or 40s.
I think it's
Jungle
50s.
Book, I think, is from the 60s or the 70s.
Yeah.
Yep.
And Cinderella
And then
is also like 40s
Cinderella's
or 50s.
like the second movie, so it's
Yeah.
like the early 50s, I think.
Or 40s. Yeah. So those are old
we-
movies.
Yeah. If we even throw in like 101 Dalmatians, that was also like 20
yeah.
years after
Right.
or something.
Well, no, that was also, again, I think, 70s-ish. I don't know.
I think that was from the
Yeah.
70s or the 80s or something.
I think it was 70s or I don't know, whatever. But the
70s or 60s, but it was also like it had been a decently long time and stuff.
yeah, and so because of that, then it makes a bit more sense to like redo a movie that, is like 60 plus years old, right?
Yeah.
So that's one thing. And again, this came out the original in 91. So fairly recent. And the second thing is that the other films, again, the three that we saw, they did do things differently.
Mm.
So, regardless of how you feel about Maleficent, it was not a straight retelling of Sleeping Beauty.
Yeah.
No.
Cinderella was the most similar, but even then, it did definitely focus on pretty different aspects of it. And
Yeah.
they did change, the characters a solid amount in terms of, kind of focusing on new things.
Yeah,
And-
because like in the original for Cinderella, it was focused more on like the stepsisters than the stepmother, but here it focused more on Cinderella
And the prince.
and and the
Yeah.
Prince Charming and stuff.
And, the whole, talking mice thing, is not in the live action thing and stuff. So that it's the most similar, but it is still noticeably different. And then Jungle Book is also pretty different in terms of both tone and style and all that kind of stuff, too.
Yeah.
Even the ending is different.
Yeah. So you end up here, and now here's the thing. I have not seen the original Beauty and the Beast. I know the story from Kingdom Hearts, but I know the story. I've seen a lot of things about it, and, I know how things go. I know that it was actually the original was nominated for Best Picture at the Academy Awards, actually. So I know that a lot of people really like the original film. I don't have any experience with it, so I can't comment on that explicitly. But so here, it's just you have a situation where we have a film that people really like, that's fairly recent and was extremely popular, that they're just doing again.
Yeah.
With not really that many there are a few changes, but in terms of if you were to describe the story to somebody, you would kind of just say the same things.
Yeah.
So it doesn't feel like there's an artistic reason for this to exist. I think that's the reason why this was the big one that got everyone to be like, Disney needs to stop with the live action remakes.
Yeah.
And yeah, I kind of agree. Okay. There's nothing in this film that is bad. Right? None of the characters are bad, none of the dialogue is bad, none of the effects are bad. None of it's bad, but none of it really stands out as really good. And again, it just feels so if by concept it doesn't seem to be a big reason to exist, and if by execution there's nothing in it where oh wow, I'm so glad I saw it because of this thing, why bother?
Yeah.
So, because okay, and one of the things that I feel like I might have said this before for maybe Cinderella, was that one of the difficulties in going from an animated thing to a live action thing is trying to convey the environments in the same sort of manner visually.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And I think this suffers from that the most of the remakes, because again, partly because it is the same thing, and so therefore we have a very clear visual in our mind of what it did look like, right? Even for someone like me who hasn't seen the original film, I know what the original film looked like. Mm-hmm. And so, for example, like the dance scene in the ballroom, right? I've seen that. I know what the colors are for that. I know what the mood is for that. And if you're doing this same kind of thing, but it doesn't feel the same, even though it doesn't even look the same. Because, like, if anything, it's kind of, in terms of colors, it's kind of dull.
Yeah.
And, like, I get the point is maybe, like, the Beast Castle's dull because of, a metaphor of his, situation or whatever. But, like, again, like, the ballroom I remember in the original, like, was really nice, and the colors were a lot more pronounced, and I get that animation is, like, a reason why it's a better way of having those more pronounced colors without looking really weird, I guess, but I don't know, it's like, the effects, the CGI and stuff on the characters and stuff, like, is of good quality, but it's not artistically nice? I don't know.
Yeah.
So, I'm kind of confused about how to think about this, because again, it's like, was it a bad movie? No, but
I guess here's another thing too. Like, I'm going to take from Maleficent, and I think Cinderella also did this. Neither of those two movies took place in a particular time frame. Like, Maleficent, definitely not. You can't tell what time frame it's supposed to take place in, because it's very fantasy oriented and stuff. And then same with Cinderella. I don't think I could say like an accurate time frame that it took place in. Like, there was nothing that was like, yes, that makes it from the 1800s or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
Here, it's very obvious they were trying to go for like a specific frame of time and stuff, because they bring up things like the plague, and then with like the manner of dressing and stuff, and none of that was really in the original. So it's kind of like you brought something extra into the picture that adds another layer to it, but the story didn't really need that layer.
Yeah.
If that makes sense.
Yeah.
Like, the whole thing with them going to Paris and everything, like...
Yeah, what was, like, the point of that? I mean, I guess just, like, to know about the mom, but, like, it's kind of, like, a decently sad moment, but at the same time, it's like, how does this relate to the story?
Especially with the book.
Yeah.
That was not in the original, I don't think.
Yeah, wait a minute, that seems like... The book just seems like it should be able to solve, like, all their problems.
Yeah.
Well, at least Belle's problems in terms of, what she needs to do, and so... Yeah, and... It's one of those things where, like... What was I thinking of? I don't know, it's like... Yeah, it's really weird for me to think about this, because, again, I kind of came away from this just kind of going, eh. And that's that.
I feel like every single time I've watched this film, my opinion of it goes down slightly. Like, the first time I watched it, I was like, okay, this is good. And the second time I watched it, it was like, okay, I kind of noticed a few things. And the third time, I was like, oh.
Again, I mean, it's not, like, if someone said they liked this movie, I'm not gonna be like, what, how could you, right? Like, but it just didn't grab me, like, at all. And it kind of sucks, because, again, like, I know the original is liked a lot. I haven't seen it. I want to see the original, to be honest. And I hope I do end up like, okay, actually, one thing about that. And I'm not saying that this is how the original is, because I don't know, I haven't seen it. But just the concept of this story, like, the fact that, here's a woman who gets kidnapped by a guy and then ends up falling in love with him, like, it seems a little, you have to do that kind of carefully, right? So, and, again, it's not like it's bad in the sense here, but it definitely feels like, oh, they love each other now because the story says so. It's like, okay, so yeah, there's a lot of moments like that where it just feels like, oh, this is necessary because that's what happens, and it's like, but you don't feel it happen, you just see it.
That was something that I missed, because in the original there was like a lead up, and I don't know why they made this a thing here, but you know how they put a lot of emphasis in the always winter thing?
Yeah.
In the original, you actually see the seasons change, because Belle, I think, was...
She came in, like, fall, I think.
Or fall? Yes, one of those two seasons.
Yeah, isn't there, like, a scene where they're, like, ice skating or something?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, there's, like, a passage of... you can feel the passage of time and everything.
Yeah, and, like, then it gets the question of, okay, that's a change, but, first of all, again, how much does it affect the actual story? It doesn't. But even then, like, why would you make that change? If anything, and by making it winter, you're making it less visually interesting.
Yeah.
So, what's the point? I guess metaphor in terms of, again, how, oh, it's all sunny then when everything's fixed, but, like, I don't think that's worth it, so...
It made a much better impact than, I think, Narnia. Like, the first one.
Yeah, always winter, never Christmas.
Yeah, because there it at least made sense, where it's like, okay, you're under the ice, like the
White Witch.
Yeah, the White Witch.
Because that's her whole spiel.
Yeah, but here it kind of doesn't make that much sense. Also, how do they get food?
It's all wolf meat. It's all wolf meat.
Wolf meat. Awesome.
And there was something else. Oh, the singing.
Oh yeah.
Emma Watson is very, very obviously auto-tuned.
Yeah.
And because I'm like, why is there this kind of like weird, like kind of echoing with her voice, where it's like I was thinking literally in my head, I was like, it sounds like she's in a studio. Oh wait, so and so yeah, I mean, and the other guys, I mean, they're fine, I guess. Like, well, okay, there's a song that Beast has, which like his voice already has like effects on it, so like but thing is this are those songs like are those what were in the original?
The song, well, not Beast song. The Beast song in the tower was not in the original.
Okay, but
it was the Sunshine one.
No, those two are not. It's kind of sad because like I actually really like Beast song on the tower, but I listened to a cover version that someone else sang.
Oh.
Yeah.
That sounds better because if you guys want to check out Nick Pitera, he's very good at singing and he sings a lot of nice Disney songs. So go check him out. Plug for him.
Okay, was there any song that was in the original that wasn't in this?
That wasn't in this.
Human Again, I think was one.
Did they kind of like fuck up? What was that called? Like Belle's "I Want" song. What's it called?
I Want Adventure. That one.
They kind of fucked it up though.
Yeah, that one.
Well, you mean the whole beginning song, right?
Not Bonjour. The song that's supposed to come after, which is Belle's solo, which is like
which she kind of transitions into from that in this. But she only sings like one chorus and that's it.
Yeah. They fucked up that song.
Well, because it seems like there's a lot of songs in this. Like, a lot of songs. Like, what was the movie that I was like, God, it feels like there's so many songs in this. What did I say? What was it?
Was it Enchanted? No, I don't think it was Enchanted.
No, it was more recent.
It was Frozen.
Yeah, it was Frozen. Yeah, I was like, it kind of felt almost like that, like, in a sense, where it's like, Jesus, there's a lot of songs in this. Frozen was a bit more front-loaded with it, so it was even worse in that case, but, like, still, I was just like, damn, this is a lot. Because again, like if I remember, the other remakes they had just a few, right? Like Jungle Book just had Bare Necessities, and then the ape had his thing.
Don't remind me. That's been stuck in my head forever.
Oh my god! But like again, that's two, and I think Cinderella had like I don't know what, maybe two or maybe three. She kind of sang to herself like at times, but it wasn't as like a musical number, right?
I thought it was more like one.
Yeah, and then Maleficent didn't have any, I don't think.
No.
Again, maybe just some maybe background songs, but not again, a musical number. So yeah, again, it comes off as like you're just doing this again in terms of like an animated, that you're just doing the animated film again, but not, and it's just like, but why? So, and I think
another song too was "Be Our Guest," which I think they remixed and stuff because it had a lot of awkward pauses and stuff.
Different insert lines and stuff. I think what they did with a lot of these songs is that they added verses to kind of make them longer, because I think Be Our Guest was that Bonjour had a few more lines from the townspeople that weren't originally in there. And what was that other song that had a little bit more? I can't remember.
You mean the Gaston song?
Oh yeah, probably.
Man. Again, I've said what I've said, my thing on that kind of stuff. But again, it just felt weird that there's just so much of this, and again, it's it just seems like repeating. And again, it makes you wonder and I think this is why a lot of people are specifically for the upcoming Lion King remake, is because they're like, what's the point of this besides making money? And again, because especially, and maybe I'm wrong, but I'm like, I don't really know how you could tell Lion King differently.
You can't,
right?
Because it's also partially based off of Hamlet. So if you stray from this Lion King or Hamlet, you don't have Lion King anymore.
Yeah.
And yeah, so it's again, I just see no reason besides money, which I mean that's probably the reason.
Because it's not like a legend. It's not like a legend like Mulan, where it has different interpretations, where you can be like, oh, maybe instead of Shang being there, she could have been there could have been this other general, and other things happen with and she has a friend in there. That's what they did with the Chinese version of Mulan. They added her friend, and I think the friend took the role of Shang, but that's because the story of Ha Mulan is a legend. It's something that exists in legend where you can interpret it differently. I know Beauty and the Beast has a base legend or folk story or whatever, and you can interpret it differently, but the Lion King is 100% based off of Hamlet.
And even then, for example, let's just actually think back to some of the other live action remakes, like Cinderella. They could actually focus on different aspects than what was focused in the animated movie, because there were different things going on. And I'm thinking the Lion King, what was in the animated Lion King that you can actually do differently and focus, what is part of that story that you can instead focus in another way? I'm just thinking the only thing I can possibly think of is focusing more on Simba growing up with Timon and Pumbaa.
Yeah.
But that's it, and I'm that's not enough to change the nature of the story. That would just add some time, right? What else can you do? I really don't know.
Not only that, but it's basically what they're doing is, even though it's quote-unquote live action, it's actually more of just a CGI thing.
Well, yeah, it's literally everything in it will be CGI. At least Jungle Book had the one kid, but this is going to be not even that.
The one kid. I guess, okay, that goes into one of the two main things I wanted to say. You guys brought up the different small changes in this version. Okay, so the thing with these changes is that they don't have any impact on the original skeleton of the story. They try to make the impression that they're making these bold moves with Belle's mother, who was never mentioned in the original one. For all we know, her father could have asexually reproduced in that movie. Fine, whatever. But they bring in the mother, and they're okay, so that's why Belle is weird and sad. But it brings in this story-breaking book, basically. Yeah. And then you have this inconsequential thing with Beast and his daddy issues, which are used just for a little bit of dialogue fodder, but otherwise it doesn't really impact anything else, because maybe it explains why he's grumpy, but in this case it just makes him kind of look like a bitch. Then you have the small, tiny detail of LeFou is now gay.
Yep.
So what?
Yeah, again, it does nothing. Like, the thing is, if I didn't know that, like, I probably wouldn't even maybe have noticed.
Yeah. So the thing is that when you guys were talking about how, like, with Cinderella, they had different things that they could have, like, tried to focus on, like, give the Prince Charming a bit more, which was good, and then, like, focus more on, like, Cinderella as a person instead of, like, the plot device from the original. But yeah, that's the thing. The original Beauty and the Beast, you don't have that much, so you could have made something different.
Right, well, because I think part of the argument, and again, I haven't seen the original, but I think the idea is that the original told all of the story.
Yeah.
So
Already.
What do you have to do? Again, like...
So that brings me to the second point.
Okay.
But you can finish.
No,
if you
I
want.
go ahead.
Okay, so the second point is, this debate was brought up recently with the release of Spider-Verse about the legitimacy of animation compared to live action. And to some extent, I think maybe besides the whole like conspiracy theory of this was a cash grab and things like that, like padding out Emma Watson's career, whatever. I don't care about what the rumors are. It's like the legitimacy of a live action movie in terms of like the Academy Awards is viewed differently than the legitimacy of animation. Animation is viewed as childish, and it's not on par with live action. So I kind of thought of it as they were trying to quote unquote like mature the story by making it live action so it could compete with some of the other films that are judged more. I don't really know the word I want to use. It's like
maturely.
It's more mature and legitimate and bourgeoisie. And I hate the fact that they do this not just to animation but to foreign films. And like Tara and I and our other friend were talking about this like the other day about how like basically the Academy Awards is pointless because it's like you have these panels of hacks who are
Freudian slip.
You have these panels of hacks who are telling you, yeah, this is the best movie, you should only watch this, because this is kind of how I like after we talked about it and stuff, and like this is kind of how I felt about Pulp Fiction, because it's like all of these critics are saying that you must love Pulp Fiction, but it's not for me. So if I don't like it, what does that make me? Does that make me a hick? Does that make me like illegitimate? If I like Studio Ghibli movies, does that make me like a weeaboo? Does that make me childish? Like,
I mean, I'd argue you're a weeb for other reasons, but okay.
But I would argue that like animated films can sometimes be more mature than live action films, especially when you consider like basically like, you know, dick flicks or, you know, things that are just like, here's an explosion, ooh ah, here's CGI, ooh ah, you know, it doesn't mean anything at that point.
Yeah, and because I look at, you know, I look at all the animated movies we've seen, and like there's a huge amount of range. Now here's the thing. They're all I think every animated film that we've seen, if not everyone we've seen, but almost all of the ones just period, are ultimately kids aimed.
Yeah.
Right? Almost every single one. And so it is kind of this thing where it's like, you know, oh, it's for the family, right? And it's like, first of all, that doesn't mean that it can't be like really good in like actual legitimate aspects. Like, again, I'd point to just how emotionally crushing like Up is at points, for example, right?
Yeah.
And so you get stuff like that, but then at the same time it's like, you know, the only time when we do get a quote-unquote adult animated film is as like a joke, right? Like Sausage Party is the joke is that it's an adult animated movie, right?
Yeah.
And so it's like, you know, trying to get that sort of place in there, and again, it was like this kind of actual thing. it's difficult. Well, it's two things. One is the actual like perception of the people making films and in the film industry, but part of it is also just the perception of just random people, right?
Yeah.
Like so many times, like I know, for example, I've talked to like my mom about, like for example, the Star Wars like Clone Wars show or whatever, and I mentioned things, and there's like, oh well, that's like she's like, oh well, that's an animated thing, and I'm like, and like, so what your point? You know, I would argue that the Clone Wars show is better, well, as a whole, better than any of the Star Wars movies. So, you know, you can't... And again, I don't know how... I think it's definitely like a cultural thing, and it especially comes from...
Yeah, probably.
Since, again, when people were older or whatever, it was only kids stuff, like straight kids stuff. We didn't, you know...
Right.
Now it's more acceptable. There's, you know, like Adult Swim in terms of animated things, and there's also like a lot of anime stuff is at least like geared toward at least older people than like young kids, right? And so there is a sort of push out from like our generation, but it's going to take a lot of time and a lot more focus, and yeah, it's definitely something that it does bother me when people have that view. Or so, and actually going with the foreign thing,
I was gonna mention
because it's like one of the things that's kind of been about this challenge is like the point of this is we get to watch all these different types of movies, and sure, we're not going to like everything we see, but that's not the point, right? The point is kind of experience all these different genres and styles, and kind of further, my idea was like further firm up like what actually do I like specifically, right? And try to get that narrowed down. And one of the big things that's unfortunate about that is every single movie here, I'm pretty sure, is ultimately Western, like American or European. Right?
Oh yeah, I was gonna mention Life is Beautiful, but yeah, that's an Italian film.
Right, there, and again, so pretty almost everything's either American or
Kingdom, right?
I don't, but again, Chinese? That's like, it's not really.
It's a crossover, I think.
Yeah, so almost everything is either American or like English, right? And then there's just very, very few, like Life is Beautiful, and like, I think, again, I guess you could call Forbidden Kingdom. There's something in the future that's kind of similar to Forbidden Kingdom in terms of that. But, well, for example, I'm kind of spoiling something for a future month, but I'll just kind of mention this. Officially, the highest grossing film for February 2019 is a Chinese movie. And I don't, and the thing is, I would like to see that. Just to see it. I'm not saying it's going to be good. I have no idea, right? But it would be cool to actually see that. Like, what is an actual, like, big budget, like, Chinese movie? I don't know, right? And so it'd be interesting to see. And unfortunately, since it is, you know, February 2019, we don't have an opportunity to do that, because we have to see the 2019 films, like, actually in theaters, and... you know, this Chinese film... We're not
going to China.
Yeah, exactly. I think there are some releases in the US, but I don't know where, and even then it's not in English. So that's not going to work, right? And so it's like, it would have been really interesting just to at least see some that's, you know, more outside of this and more different, because that's one of the things, I know we brag on China for their shit taste in movies a lot of the time. But like, it would be interesting at least to see that. And I think one of the things that is really interesting is this sort of proliferation of like actual like big films from other countries. Again, I believe the whole thing with the Chinese film, that is the first time that you have this highest grossing film that is, again, I guess you could count Life is Beautiful as like, this is the highest grossing film worldwide of a month, right? I remember, actually it's one of the months later this year, an American film won the month, but like very close behind it was another Chinese one as well. So it's just like, it's interesting in terms of seeing that expand out and like going further, and you know, especially hopefully in maybe like a decade or two, we'll actually get like a pretty good variety of like movies from all different countries being like really well known and famous. I hope so. Just because, again, I'm not saying they're all going to be great, but not all American films are great. So it's not like it's going to change anything, you know, in that sense. So yeah, and it's definitely something that I think would just be really interesting to kind of get into and look at more.
It also brings up a good question as to Why is there a category for Best Foreign Film in the Academy Awards?
Right.
Oh yeah, so that actually brought something up with the most recent Academy Awards, because, like, for example, I know in, like, Best Foreign Film, I think there was, like, Roma, right, which was a Mexican film, but that was also, like, Best Picture, I think, at least nominated for Best Picture. So, what's the point, right?
Right.
It's kind of, again, so it's just kind of strange, and also it feels kind of selfish as to say, okay, let's take all the other countries in the world and stick them into one category.
Yeah, especially when probably all the other countries in the world probably make far more movies combined than anything.
Well, yeah. I mean, doesn't actually just India by itself make more movies than all the other countries combined?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I guess there is another example. As much as I am not one for Bollywood films and stuff, I do admit that there are also really good Bollywood films. There was a film that I had seen a couple years ago with my grandparents, and it actually had like a really good story and stuff, and I was like, oh, let me look this up. And then I saw it was nominated for Best Foreign Film, but it didn't win. It was like, apparently all the other countries, they send in like a movie that they want to be judged for the Academy Awards, and that was India's
I see.
send in, and it did not get
See, I think what would be really interesting is if they basically had their own sort of award thing, separate from the Academy Awards, that basically was that, but for, like, every country.
Yeah.
Have, like, every country, or at least as many as can do it, send in a film to represent what they think is best for their year. And, you know, so every country gets one. And then...
actually, I heard this year, this month, a pretty good Vietnamese action film came out.
Oh, really?
So if you guys want to, like, maybe put it on the bonus list, it's called Fury, but it's like about this mother and her daughter, and the daughter gets kidnapped, and the mother was like an ex-gangster, so she has to go save her daughter.
So this
she kicks ass everywhere.
So wait, this is Woman on Fire.
Yeah, this is Woman on Fire. I'm pretty interested to see it, because it's like, wait, it's a Vietnamese film? Like, you never hear about that ever.
Yeah.
Because, I'm thinking, like, what have I heard? I've heard, like, I guess Mexico a little bit. I've heard, you know, like...
Canada?
British, Canada, Canadian, Indian, Chinese, Japanese, Korean... A little bit Australian for, like, I know a few Australian movies, but mostly because of some... It was in a list of, you know, underrated films of stuff, and I was like, oh, here's some Australian movies.
Course.
And so, like, that's... well, we know about a Ugandan film.
Yes, apparently we do.
Yeah. So, oh my... See, that's... Okay, my idea, then we can have movies like that being showcased off as, like, you know, this is what our country means for film, but it's like, oh my god, please. So yeah, like... That should definitely be a thing. I don't know, because again, I'm not saying that like something like the Academy Awards is like completely inherently worthless, right? But it's definitely like very much American centric, which is fine if that's what you're doing, right? But like don't therefore act that you're speaking for the world.
Yeah.
So yeah, I kind of see it.
It's kind of it reminds me of another thing where. Was it last year? I don't remember.
Are you talking about the White Academy Awards?
Well, there was that, but I was talking about, what are the music ones called? Grammys?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
What was the year where it was like the Korean pop band won something, and then a lot of people were really angry because they weren't American, and then a lot of people brought up the fact that a lot of other artists are actually like British or Australian or Canadian.
That was either last year or the year before. Was that for BTS?
It might have been. I don't
follow K-pop. We don't follow K-pop, so we don't really know. So
all I know is that there was a Korean band that had won, I think, like the social media category or something, and they went to go get their award and stuff. But there were a lot of like really angry people on Twitter who were like, they're not even American, they shouldn't get the award, blah, 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 blah. And then there were people that were like, dude, there are so many other people that are not American too, but they go and they get awards and everything too. Like, Justin Bieber is an example.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What's her name?
Those people.
What's her name?
I mean, I kind of coming at the Grammys for a different angle, which is basically that it's way too pop song focused, but you know, whatever. Again, it's this whole problem
I
where
pay attention to the Grammys. I just saw that article.
yeah, no, I get. But it's one of those things as well where it's like, if you're trying to go for like, you know, what's the quote best of everything, you default to kind of these like popular categories because that's what people know.
Yeah.
And again, especially for something like this, it's like the things that you like the most, at least for me, like they're very personal. So it's like, how do I, you know, come up with like, that's why, for example, you know, in terms of like, we're not like collectively making one ranking list.
Yeah.
Right, yeah.
We could kind of do that, and I actually kind of feel like after we make our list, it'd be interesting to kind of put them together and kind of maybe come up with some sort of average just to see how that looks like. I'll deal with it, but that's an after the fact, and just as of a curiosity. I wouldn't then parade that and say this is how we feel about these movies because it's not, right? So, yeah, anyway, we've been talking for a really long time, not about this movie. Is there anything else to say about any of this or the movie or even the scenarios we've been describing?
Nah.
No.
Okay, I think we got our points across.
Yeah.
Whoa, so the next movie is Fortuitous.
Oh my god, yeah, I'm closing out with something familiar.
Oh boy.
And you know, I think that aspect of this next movie is the most interesting thing about this movie.
I know, right? I'm so upset.
So,
on that high note or low note, I guess we're speeding out.
That's the mycicle starting up. And that's the petering out.